Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming out on this rainy night. We really appreciate it. I'm noticing that most of the people in the audience are women. We need our male allies. You should all brought your male friends, really. Just saying, okay. You tried, okay, there you go. Welcome. I am the incoming Executive Director of NAAPIMHA, the National Asian American Pacific Islander Mental Health Association. Thank you. And welcome to Amplify Voices, Promote Women's Wellness, Elevating Asian Communities in Civic Engagement. Now, there's a lot of information about NAAPIMHA everywhere. I hope you take some of it with you. But NAAPIMHA is a national organization dedicated to promoting and redefining the mental and well-being of AA and HPI communities through training programs, policy, and advocacy serving those with lived experience. We envision a world where mental health is destigmatized and AA and HPI individuals and communities can access care and information they need. I am a person with lived experience with mental health concerns as well as a suicide attempt survivor. And one of the things that NAAPIMHA does is we run a network called NAAPIMHA, the National Asian American Pacific Islander Empowerment Network, which is a network of people with lived experience, either in mental health challenges themselves or loss survivor of suicide, you know, an attempt survivor of suicide, or someone who's a family member of someone who's struggling. Because where can we talk about these issues? Because we have such a stigmatized community often. So this is what we're trying to do, is break the stigma and educate people. This particular initiative is Vote for Wellness. So, I mean, when you think about why vote for wellness, well, without a strong and healthy democracy, civil liberties, and protection from discrimination and just systems, our communities cannot feel secure, right? We can't feel safe or hopeful or effective. And while voting and elections shape the quality and accessibility of our healthcare system, voting for wellness is more than just casting a ballot, right? It's investing in the health and vitality of individuals and communities, particularly our communities. Right? Recognizing the interconnectedness of civic engagement, physical and behavioral health, it's essential to know the power of all of our voices. You know, people get apathetic and like, oh, I'm not going to vote, right? But it matters. It really does matter. You know, people ask me, well, what can we do? I always say, vote, amongst other things, but definitely vote. So through our civic engagement, we can influence healthier, more resilient communities through a system where everyone can thrive. And tonight we're bringing special focus to women's wellness and mental health advocacy. And we hope to create, you know, connection, collaboration, and advocacy among all of you. So we had some community partners, the Commonwealth Seminar, and Leverett represents the Commonwealth Seminar, and their tagline is opening the doors of government to everyone for over 20 years by training diverse leaders about legislative process and encouraging them to be effective advocates and pursue careers in public service. Also the Mass Coalition for Suicide Prevention, Education, Equity, and Advocacy for a World Without Suicide. MCSP is a collaborative coalition of diverse array of partners who work together to reduce suicide and promote mental wellness in Massachusetts through statewide collaboration, education, and advocacy. We're also very grateful for the space. You know, Cambridge Foundry is a new space for community groups and artists, and we're very happy to be here. I'm going to mention a land acknowledgement, and we do have the full land acknowledgement in the program, as well as up there. We want to recognize this event takes place on land that is the territory of the Massachusetts Pawtucket and their neighbors, the Wampanoag and the Nipmuc peoples. And we have a really great panel tonight. I'm really excited. I mean, I shouldn't do that, sorry. Yeah, so I'm really excited about our panel tonight. But before we get started, we have a few words from Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, who did a video for us.
It is such an honor to welcome all of you to this amazing event. I'm so grateful to everyone at NAAPIMHA, especially Dr. Suyemoto, for everything you do to overcome the stigma of mental health and amplify Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander voices. It was my mom's journey with mental health that got me involved in government and politics to begin with. I saw through my family's experiences that even with resources and programs in place, receiving that care can still feel so far away because of everything from transportation access to language barriers or cultural competency. That's why it's so important for all of us, regardless of background or language, to be involved in our political process. Because when we make our voices heard, we can make sure that the right resources are actually accessible to all of us. That's why the theme of this evening's event, Amplify Voices, Promote Women's Wellness, is so important. Because my family's story is just one of so many stories that might go unheard. I want to thank everyone here for refusing to be silent. And I want to thank our panelists for sharing their stories with all of us tonight.
So we are, and we're really grateful for Mayor Wu's leadership and the city's tremendous investment in responding to the urgent need for more mental health support for youth and families. So now it's time to move on with our program. We're using Mentimeter to do some interactive polling. So if you take your phone out, you can scan the QR code and then tap the banner that appears. You can also type in menti.com in your browser when prompted and type in the code numbers that are displayed, the 8887, etc. And so we're gonna take a minute to answer this question, and then we'll see what happens with the responses. And keep the site open as we will be using it a few times during this presentation. So let's take a minute, everyone can figure that out. I'm always the one saying, how do you do this?
I got the website, but I can't figure out how to click, how to actually answer the question.
You know, I am not the person to help you.
Okay.
Is it not working? Is it working, Audrey?
Oh, no.
Did it work or no? Did anyone get it?
Oh, I see.
No one's getting it.
Yeah.
All right, you know what? So no one got it to work, right? Is that true? All right. Let's just move on. Okay? All right, we're gonna move on. So I guess maybe we'll just take three answers to this question. The question really was what issues in women's women's engagement in the political process, what women's health issues, behavioral health issues, will get you to the polls, right? Right? That was the question. So does anyone have a quick answer? What would get you, what would get you to the polls? Anyone? Yes?
Candidates who have initiatives for women to get easier access to counseling.
Okay, great. Another one. Yes?
Representation, so people see more women offices and knowing that their issues are valid.
Representation. Excellent. One more. Quick. Anyone? Oh, come on. Anyone? Anyone? All right. Well, we'll just continue on. So one of the things that we want to think about are which kinds of issues, will bring us to the polls and really educating ourselves in that way, right? Okay, so let's, so our program, hopefully this works. Does this work? Yeah. Good. All right, excellent. So our program is online. You can get the online program, or there's a few paper copies hanging around. So if you'd like to take a paper copy, please do. I'd like to take a moment to mention some shared agreements. Please silence your phones if you haven't done so already. These I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. People are familiar with them in general. But it's important to note that this event is nonpartisan. It's about education and, sort of thinking about what the reality is in the current situation in terms of our country. It's also, just be respectful and use discernment because, if people want to share a story, not like, you can share my stories out, that's fine. But, in terms of people may want to ask questions, please, the basically names and people's identities stay here. And, okay, so let's meet our panelists. I'm very excited with these panelists. And, everyone's taking time out of their work lives, out of their live lives, to be here with us today. And we're really grateful. Each panelist really exemplifies dedication and advocacy in our communities, and they bring a lot of experience, perspective, expertise, the whole 9 yards to this conversation. So I'm really excited. So please help me in welcoming our panelists. We have Chris Hahm right here. Dr. Hahm is a professor and associate dean for research at Boston University of Social Work. Their full bios are in the program. Leverett Wing is next to her, and he's the president and CEO of the Commonwealth Seminar. And Don Sauma at the end there, the Asian director, co-executive director of the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence, ATASK. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Bora, was unable to meet us tonight. She's recovering from a recent illness, so we wish her the very best. Okay, so what we're going to do is I asked the speakers to come up with a tagline for their bios. So we're not going to do all of the bios. So mine is mental health educator and activist.
I am a mental health researcher and advocate for Asian American mental health.
Thank you.
I'm embarrassed to say I forgot, but I have a new tagline which somebody bestowed upon me, which is Leverett the Connector. Instead of the Leverett Connector, which is where all the traffic is stuff, I'm Leverett the Connector. So I'll use that one that was just bestowed on me.
So I've never done this before, so what I came up with is probably too long, but it was activist and advocate, amplifying voices for change.
That's perfect. Thank you. So I you hear some threads, right, amongst everybody, for sure. So I want to ask a question just to get us going to learn a little bit about the panelists. Was there a specific event or moment that motivated you to engage in community advocacy? And would you be willing to share that briefly? For myself, actually, I think, when I started my road to recovery, one of the things that I did was volunteer for Families for Depression Awareness, and I became an outspoken person that did the media, and that helped me heal. So that helped me heal. So that activist, stance was also really important in terms of my trajectory, my work, and all that kind of thing.
For me, I've been studying Asian American mental health for the last 20 years. And for the last 20 years, every day, I feel like this study surrounding Asian American mental health is underfunded, understudied, under-researched, under-resourced, is all under. So that makes me feel like, you can go either way. You can give up, or you get so mad and you don't want to give up. So this part is so discouraging sometimes, but I am more hopeful as I'm doing more because I think about the future. I think about 20 years from now, our population is going to be about 39 million. That is 1 in 10 of Asian, there's going to be 1 in 10 population that will be Asian Americans. If you add mixed races with Asians, it's even more, it's greater. So now if you think about that, if we don't understand Asian Americans, and if you cannot support Asian American mental health, that means American health is going to suffer. So when we think about that, I think about my children's health, I think about my grandchildren's health. I don't have grandchildren yet, okay? So, but someday I will. And we must continue, we must fight for this important area of study.
Mine took place on my very first week as a part-time worker at the Massachusetts State House. It was the Friday before a long weekend, before what was then called Columbus Day. It was about 4 in the afternoon, and as the new person in the office, I got sent to the State House post office, which, if you know the State House, it's so easy to get lost. You have to go up 2 floors to go down 1 floor, and then the post office was way in the catacombs of the State House. And I got lost. And on the way back, it was probably taking about half an hour. On the way back, I was wandering, still couldn't find my way back, and then the door opened to one of the offices. And a young woman came out, and she motioned me over and said, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm thinking, wow, everybody here is so friendly. And I just kind of come and greet me. So she and I started talking, and after a little while, she motioned into her office and said, "Yeah, over the long weekend, can you please make sure that our carpets get vacuumed? Because we have a lot of trash and we don't want any mice or rats coming in." And my wife, who is here, is always teasing me about, being a little slow on different things. And imagine, being at 22 years of age, how slow I was back then. And I didn't even think what was happening. I said, "Oh, you want the cleaning crew? They'll be in probably about half an hour. So maybe contact one of them." And I just kind of went on my way. And then as I was halfway down the hill between Park Street and the State House, it dawned on me, she thought I was a member of the cleaning crew. And then the next week, it was Tuesday, I went back, and I couldn't go knocking on doors. I was brand new. I couldn't say, "Where is she?" But I started looking around. I started paying more attention, and I realized that the only, and a couple of folks have said this to me, the only color you would see in the State House until 4:30 was in the Hall of Flags. And then at 4:35 o'clock, you go in, and then this tapestry of diversity, people, women, people of color would come in. It was because they were members of the custodial cleaning crew. And so it was 4:30 on a Friday. I was a person of color. I actually was dressed similar to how I am now. I might actually see the same outfit from 20 but I was dressed similar to how I am now. And so even with that, I'm a person of color, 4:30, I must have been a member of the cleaning crew. And that really motivated me to start looking more carefully and seeing the faces at the State House and seeing the faces in government and trying to get more folks from our community, particularly Asian American community, which did not have an elected official in state government until 2008. This, I won't tell you how old I am, but it was back in the 90s when this happened. And so back then, I was the only Asian American in the State House for a number of years. And so that's what got me motivated, and that's what kind of led me down this path.
Thank you.
So for me, I think what set the stage was becoming an adult. So when I turned 18 and could sort of had my own identity and could separate myself from my parents and detach myself from my parents, I was all excited that I could now vote. I could do my own taxes. I know, weird, but I thought it was cool at the time. And I could fill my own census form. So when it came time to be able to fill out my own census form, I got the census and was reading through the instructions and read the instructions there, and I was instructed to check one box for my race. I'm biracial, and was instructed to check that one box. So I was very offended that was my option and that I didn't have my identity represented on this census. And so I proceeded to check the white box, the Asian box, and then to write in my Japanese ethnicity right onto that form. And so I probably disqualified myself from the census, but my 18-year-old self was incredibly proud. And so, however, I think so it wasn't until I started, until I started my professional career working in direct services with Asian and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders that really sort of set me off on my trajectory towards advocacy. And it was because the very barriers that were barriers for my clients were the same barriers that were barriers for me as a provider. And so it got me onto the path of wanting to change those systems and make a difference in that area.
Thank you. And thinking about systems and thinking about change and thinking about what does it mean to be a voter in this election? What issues, are important to us? What system changes would we like to see? I'm going to turn to Chris and ask, what are some key issues that you see that are particularly important for young women, which is the population, one of the populations you work with, in this election year?
So this is a really good question. And I've been thinking a lot about this election and women or young adults or adults and immigrant population. And I've been thinking a lot about the crisis that America is facing. We are living in crisis right now. If you think about the gun violence, number one, and soaring mental health problems, especially among young adults and adolescents, suicide, substance use, and healthcare cost, and the education, the lack of education or the cost of the education, and reproductive rights. Those are all the crises and threats that we are facing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more details. So for instance, gun violence. Last year only, about 19,000 people died by gun violence. This is excluding suicide, okay? And so the gun violence is, in America, is 26 times greater, higher number than other, developed countries. You cannot imagine that this is just crazy number of the people who are dying. For instance, last year, 1,300 teenagers died because of gun violence, and 306 children died because of gun violence. And because of this, unexpected violence and anxiety levels growing, it is also having an impact on depression. So last year, we hit the highest rates, prevalence of suicide in America. There was 50,000 people died by suicide. 50,000 people. Do you know each one person, whenever they die by suicide, do you know how many people this one person is having an impact? Think about that. The really strong impact. The emotional impact, the physical impact, the mental health impact is 15 to 30 people. Okay? So one person died by suicide. Okay, so 15 to 30 people are being impacted by it. So that is a huge number. But the resources or the understanding of this group of people, especially for Asian American, lacks so much. In fact, this is what I want to study. My future study is going to be really studying this, surviving members of the suicide among Asian Americans. So I wanted to look into these numbers, right? Oh my God, look into the literatures. I was shocked. There was not even one study focused on Asian American families. Although suicide is the number one cause of death for young adults and adolescents among Asian Americans. Number one cause of death. Those are our children. Okay? But then there was no study which focused on the surviving members of suicide among Asian Americans. This is outrageous to me. So that's number two. Number three is educational cost. I work at BU. This year, the tuition and living cost together is going to be $90,000 per year. Not every year. It's outrageous, right? But then 45% of the people are paying that, and then the rest of the people are paying, less than that. But still, the sticker price is so high. So really, not many people now, a lot of people don't even want to think about going to colleges, right? I came from South Korea. In South Korea, 70% of the people go to college. Here, 70% of the people do not go to college, but the number of the colleges is going to be lower. It's all affecting, and reproductive rights. Sorry. I'm gonna go fast. Reproductive rights. You know what's happening? Roe v. Wade was overturned. So, like Mississippi, Arizona, all these kind of red states, it is in crisis because even if women are having miscarriage, they are at risk of being charged of attempted murder, or the physicians cannot even treat them because they are so scared of being charged with murder. So this is a crisis that we are dealing with, and I do think that we have to think about all this kind of social crisis that we are experiencing, and think really clearly about who we need to vote.
Yes. Yes. So I actually like to bump to Dawn, if that's okay. So related to what Chris was just talking about, how do we ensure that AA and HPIs have a voice in shaping these policies that that are affecting what Chris was talking about in terms of health, women's health and mental health?
So I'll use the work that we do at ATASK as an example. So let me sort of give some context. So people sometimes don't know that ATASK, or don't know or wonder why a domestic violence organization like ATASK is so involved in policy advocacy, research, and coalition building. And but as a direct service provider, we have firsthand knowledge of the systemic barriers that Asians face when seeking access to justice and to safety. And so we work with a marginalized population with a specialized service. And so think about it like this. If you have a loved one who's experiencing Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, you're gonna go to a specialist, you're gonna go see a neurologist. Think of us as the neurologist. So we serve, the population that we serve are Asian victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And the majority of our clients are immigrants and limited English proficient, and they fear the consequences of immigration and of being misunderstood through language and cultural barriers. And so these factors make them more vulnerable. And so we use that insight in order to propel sort of our advocacy efforts. And so as an organization that 95% of our clients are limited English proficient, one of our most important platforms is something you might not think of, but is very, very relevant to the work that we do, which is language justice. And so one of those things that we advocate on behalf of is the Language Access and Inclusion Act, which is still sort of sitting in the Senate right now. And the way that we advocate for this act in itself is a couple of ways. And so both our staff and our clients have attended hearings and provided testimony in front of legislators. Both staff and clients have participated in press conferences and briefings. We as an agency are involved in multiple coalitions that advocate on behalf of language justice and language access. And we also speak at conferences and events like this to talk about the importance of language justice for everyone. And so I highlighted just language, I thought I was gonna fall out of my pocket, language justice, but we also advocate on issues such as immigration and on access to legal services, and also to health and mental health services for Asians.
Thank you. So, Lev, how can we, well, first, from your perspective, what does it mean to be an ally in these spaces? But also, how can we encourage women, to participate in the political process as
I mean, to encourage folks, I think what has always worked, and actually what has always been the motivating factor, is when it becomes personal. When it becomes, I think Mayor Wu was a prime example, and she has always said she did not envision herself running for public office and being part of public office. Her parents always told her to keep your head down and just do the work. But it was her mom's, I think she even mentioned and referenced in her video, it was her mom's mental health and the obstacles and the barriers that she had to fight through and she had to overcome that led her, was one of the factors that led her toward running for public office. The other was when she tried to open a coffee shop, and this is also related to her mom's mental health stuff. She moved back to Chicago and she wanted to open a coffee shop so that she could run the business, be near her family. But she ran into all this red tape in just terms of trying to start up a coffee shop. They wanted to start up in 3 months. It took a year and a half to start that up. And it was those types of issues that motivated her to run. So, I mean, Dr. Hahm mentioned Roe v. Wade. Dr. Hahm mentioned affordable education. It's motivating folks through those types of issues. I mean, Roe v. Wade is now the galvanizing issue in so many states. I mean, we know, for those who've been following the news, Arizona, the courts in Arizona just affirmed an archaic 1864 law, which is now motivating and galvanizing people. Affordable education. I've always said that the United States has it backwards, where the other countries, public education is the way to go. Public education, people who attend public colleges in other countries, they're the ones who are saying, oh wow, they're the smart. But here in the United States, we have it backwards for whatever reason. Yeah, and maybe California seems to have the best handle on it, where the state system is seen as the golden, as sort of the gold standard. But in other states, it's public education is seen as, oh, well, the folks who couldn't get into these private colleges, or the folks who couldn't afford these private colleges, are sort of seen as almost second-class citizens. And so we need to elect officials who support these types of issues, who have these lived experiences, who have gone through things like the mayor has. And that's how you motivate people to get involved. And that's how you push people to their strongest levels of involvement. Because it's easy to say, yeah, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. But when you have that extra level of motivation, that's when people get galvanized. That's when they motivate their friends, family, and acquaintances to move forward with different agendas.
Yeah, I think that personal investment is really important. I think we see that in all of our stories here, where something moved us to be able to do something about advocacy, about education, and those kinds of things. So, Chris, how can we increase civic engagement and political participation among young women, particularly in the context of mental health advocacy?
Yeah, so, I think we need to kind of understand the definition of the civic engagement first. So what is civic engagement? The first thing which comes to your mind could be voting, right? Obviously. And the second could be volunteering. For the organization, just like this, organization that builds community, that's also civic engagement. And you can also be an activist, registration, sorry. Another thing is running for the school council or the city council. Oh, that's kind of tough, but those are all the umbrella of the civic engagement. I think another thing is that we talked about the being personal, right? For some of you may think that, oh, I have nothing to be really personal about, right? It's also possible. For me, I don't, it's possible. Like, not everybody has, like, Mayor Wu's situation where mother has or family member has a severe mental illness. It's not the case for everybody. So, for those people who don't necessarily have the personal connection, you have to think about some other things, right? That is the benefits. So what's in it? What values does it have? There are a lot of values actually. With the civic engagement, the research shows that those people who vote and those people who are involved in this kind of, their community environment as a group, their mental health and their self-assessed health is greater, is higher, is more positive. And I want to tell you a little bit about the importance of the self-assessed health. So it is a very simple question. So how would you rate your health? Excellent, or very good, or fair, or poor, right? The question that I ask you is a very, very important question because this question is a predictor for your future mortality and mobility. Those people who participate in voting, those people who participate in some kind of volunteer work or some kind of work around this civic engagement, they have a higher or more positive self-assessed health. So I think that is a really important benefit. And by just jumping in to be involved in this kind of organization or voting, they can actually feel like I am empowered. I actually can do, even if they're like just one person, but I can actually change the world a little bit. I think that recognition and understanding the benefit, I think is the key.
There's also sort of the social interaction.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, but
yeah,
there's also
please.
a social
Yes,
interaction
yeah.
where it's, and sort of the mental health is also is socializing with others, finding that group, finding others who share your interests, finding others who share your passions and interacting with them. That is also one of the things that you see in all the research is one of the factors that leads to longer lives, longer and happier lives. And people don't think of politics as a social activity, but it is. It's a mobilizing, it's a gathering, it's a coalescing among people who share values, who share viewpoints. And so that's one of the bigger things, one of the bigger benefits in how you find sort of your folk, your family, your friends.
And I do think that the whole question of civic engagement, voting is very important, of course, but it's bigger than that, right? It's bigger. It's getting involved in the community in various ways. It's getting involved with organizations that align with your values, right? It's getting involved with things that hit home that may be, might not be your issue, but it might be your friends or your loved ones. Chris mentioned the amount of people who get affected by suicide. I've actually heard a larger number. I've heard 134. So which doesn't surprise me. Think about it. When someone dies by suicide, it's like, oh, gee, the barista at Starbucks, where is so-and-so, right? You start, you have your, whatever, 8 to 10, 12, people that are close, but then you start moving out, and more people, and like when you think about all those people, it's like, those people are part of a community, around that one person, right? So, I think, we need to think about how we relate in community, right? So one of the things I was gonna ask Leverett is like, what are some successful strategies? Like, how can we engage people to be involved in civic activities, to be involved in these groups, and other than just having a personal connection,
I've always started with sort of the folks on the grassroots, the folks on the ground. For example, ATASK. These are the organizations that have the networks. They also have the credibility. They also have the trust of people who can go and they can talk to folks. They can educate folks, and they can mobilize folks. So I've always started with the folks on the ground. In the communities, particularly in the greater Boston area, you go to Chinatown, you talk about Chinese Progressive Association, you talk about BCNC, Asian CDC. Up in Lowell, you have CMAA. So these are the organizations that I personally work with, and the Commonwealth Seminar has often worked with. In Dorchester, I see Jamie back there, VietAid, and the Vietnamese community. These are the folks who have that type of credibility and that type of trust, and they know what's happening in the community, so they can sort of read and react more quickly, and they can educate public officials, they can educate their staff, and they can educate legislators on what's actually happening. So I've always gone with the strategy of, go with the foundation that has already been laid and help strengthen that foundation as well whenever you can, because those are the folks who will help uplift the community in the long run.
Thank you. Yeah. So Don, how do you perceive these system challenges, right, impacting the resources and particularly in your work with survivors, how can we work to better meet the needs of marginalized populations in these groups, and maybe even a step further, and getting them to realize that they too have a voice and engage.
So I'll sort of answer this like in two parts.
Sure.
And so I think the first part is I think systems just need to be designed differently. A lot of systems are designed for the majority, which results in marginalized communities and exclusion. And so I'm going to use an example, and one that we sort of encounter in the work that we do that resonates. And so I'm going to guess everybody here has been asked the question, do you feel safe at home? For the most part, I'm going to guess that people have been asked that question. And essentially what that is that's code for, are you being abused, right? And so it's like an open door to both help and hope. But where the concern arises is when that seemingly simple but really critical question can be misconstrued to mean something entirely different. And so we sort of set out to kind of understand whether or not our theory was true, that it was being misconstrued differently. And so with the help of our bilingual advocates, we started asking our clients, and even some of our staff, what did do you feel safe at home mean to them? And so their responses were alarming. And so what they thought was that we were asking whether or not the structure of their home was stable and safe. They thought we were asking about whether or not they felt that there was criminal activity going around in their neighborhood and they felt unsafe. They thought that we were asking whether or not a stranger was following them or stalking them. They did not think we were asking about whether or not they were being abused in their own homes. So we wondered how many missed opportunities there were to help somebody, to save a life, just because of an exclusive practice. And so when we think about exclusive practices and how do we make change, we think about like the sort of the polar opposite, and like what's inclusivity look like, and how do we look at these systems differently. And some of the ways that we can do this, I mean, these are not like uncommon thoughts. But one of them is having diverse representation in decision-making processes. Another one is funding culturally specific organization and bilingual and multilingual providers and professors in a way that values their language and their culture and the contributions that they bring with that expertise. Another way to think about this is, sorry, I need to go back. I don't want to like miss like a point. Give me 1 second. My papers stick every time I try to do this. Okay, so it's funding on Asian communities and providing enough funding for translation and interpretation. A lot of times in research, there's not enough funding, or there's not a thought to be, to how do I reach out to these communities where somebody doesn't speak English, because their voice matters just as much, and oftentimes what they're facing is different, and we need to understand what that is. And I think Bruce, you might know this, but there was a study done about 5 years ago that went over a 26-year sort of span of time from 1992 to 2018, which looked at the NIH budget, and which is the National Institute of Health. And it found that only 0.17% of the total NIH budget went to projects focused on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island participants. 0.17%. That's how little the research is on the Asian community. So if you talk about knowledge and data, of course there isn't any. You need to invest in that. And so I think the last thing I'll talk about, I know that Leverett's going to be able to expand on this, is data, disaggregated data. So the data equity bill passed after 7 years in the works, passed just last year. And why this is an important bill for Asians and other minorities is that it begins to capture their diverse experiences. And so what's important about that is that that information is necessary for policy, for best practices, for interventions that are meaningful to a community, and for resources being put back into those communities. And so I think I'll stop there in thinking about sort of the ways that we can affect change.
Would you mind?
Yeah, I mean, and the data disaggregation bill and the need for data in the Asian American community is so important. It's so lacking. When you go into health, I'm on the boards of Jaws and Diabetes Center and Beth Israel Deacon's Medical Center. And the work that I found there is the dearth of data and information on the Asian American community is startling. And for the work at Jaws and Diabetes Center, one of the things we discovered is there were no studies done on Asian Americans in diabetes. And so the data disaggregation bill will really help in that, because the treatment that you'll get for a Chinese American is very different. The physiology, the diet, the sociology is very different for a Chinese American as it is for a Filipino American. The physiology is very different for a Vietnamese American. So the disaggregation of data that breaks it down amongst the Asian American community is actually going to make and I use the terms life and death are often overused, but it actually can mean life or death. Because if you're treating somebody who, just sort of a blanket, one size fits all, it's not going to fit one, a Chinese American versus a Japanese versus a Korean American. So data disaggregation is very vital. So when that finally passed, I think it's a boon for not only the Asian American community as a whole, but also for all of our health and our well-being. So we're a wonderful time that it happened.
I mean, the fact that we have that bill passed is wonderful. We also now that we have this data disaggregation, where is the fund to do the research? Right. I mean, that's, I think, to Chris's point about there's no, they're not investing, right? Or maybe it was wrong. They're not investing in, studies for our population. So this is another reason that we have to make sure that we have we vote and we have a voice in these places to be able to say, we need this. We need this to understand our communities, right? We need this to understand what's going on in specific places, because it does look different. A few years ago, there was an uptick in Bhutanese suicides in Massachusetts. The only reason I knew that was because there was someone in the Bhutanese community that was talking to me. It wasn't in our stats. Asian Americans seem to do reasonably well in Massachusetts, but no. So we really need that. Thank you. So I want to ask sort of a question of everyone. As we tackle these interconnected challenges, we need to recognize and give creative solutions, right? And we have a lot of challenges. How can we boost AA and HPI civic engagement while advocating for women's health and ensuring inclusivity and intersectionality in our efforts? And it's a big question, but I think it's worth thinking about. How can we make a change? What are some solutions? What are some things that we can do to make a difference? Anyway.
I mean, I guess I'll echo what I said before, is to engage the folks who are on the ground and to uplift our community organizations. And it's a plug for ATASK, it's a plug for all of our community organizations who are doing the work, because it's these community organizations who have the relationships with legislators, who have the relationships with their staff, who know what's happening on the ground, who can pivot sort of more quickly than a lot of other folks in the community. And so one of the things that the community organizations know sort of the intersectionality of how one thing relates to another, how sort of how food deserts relate to poverty, which relates to education, because the kids are hungry, so they're not participating as much or doing as well in school. So these community organizations are the ones who can understand and appreciate the intersectionality and can relay that to the public officials, to their staffs, and to the decision makers. So that's sort of what I always like to plug is, we always look at the legislators, we always look at the elected officials, maybe their staff, but the folks who can help educate them are the ones who are on the ground in our community. So I always like to say it starts on the ground, and it starts with our community work. And if I could give a quick shout out to Tegan, who was our Commonwealth Seminar Fellow. They came all the way from Brockton, and so now they have to take the active art. So thank you for making the commitment, Tegan. So thank you for being here.
Such an eye-opening experience, and it's really nice meeting all you guys and meeting so many people from all over the state, from different organizations. I just want to say, UNSW is of Asian descent and of Cape Verdean descent. I think it's just truly amazing supporting communities who don't get that support, and keep up the amazing work because you guys are new relation.
Thank you.
I don't want to miss my name, but you know.
Question, Don? For me, I think we have to utilize our injunction. What that means is that you talked about 0.17%, right? Okay, so let me explain to you. So that means NIH has invested in our health, Asian American health, less than 1% of the total budget. But 0.17% is closer to 0 than closer to 1. We gotta be angry. We should not tolerate this. That means we are worthless. That's what I interpret this. You guys don't have any problems. You guys are quiet. You don't care what we do. That's what your health doesn't matter to me. That's how I interpret this. And I was so shocked, but I was not very surprised, given the fact that I've been very fortunate to get funded by NIH, but there were a lot of times that my great proposal has not been funded. Or I'm pushing, okay? And I had to fight so much. And in fact, I was talking with my colleague who is Korean American, because she studies Hispanic, Latinx research. She's an amazing researcher, she's an amazing interventionist, and I was thinking, oh my God, if she studies Asian Americans, I think we'll have a greater, knowledge and push the envelope for the literatures, right? So I was asking her, because she's my friend, how come you don't study Asian Americans? I mean, just saying. She said, are you kidding me? There's no money. How can I survive as a researcher? She's talking to me, who is studying Asian Americans, nonetheless. So this is a reality. So we have to be so angry. So you know what I did? After the study was published, it was published in JAMA, open access. When the study was published, and at the same time, in a year or so, there was a call from NIH. Okay, how can NIH do better in serving marginalized communities? So I got all my students together, and there was a question and answer. We had to do some survey, right? I asked all my students, you have to write. We have to do something together as a group. So I wrote, and at the time I had 15 students. We all wrote something and repeated the same thing. 0.17% is not acceptable. So it was sent to NIH. And I don't know if it is because of that or it's independent of that. I actually got a call from NIH to actually participate in this small group of researchers to push the envelope to address these health disparities among marginalized communities. So I was actually with the NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health director. He was in the Zoom meeting together. It was only 16 people. And I talked about 0.17%. Well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think things are changing a little bit. So number one is the secret is that we should be angry. Because the anger is going to push us to do some action. And we should never tolerate this. We should never tolerate this status quo. And tell everybody about this. And use the media advocacy. You have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I don't care what you have. You have to write about it. WeChat, 카카오톡.
Don?
I mean, I agree 100%. I agree with what both you said. And even for ATASK as a culturally specific organization, we're like a handful of culturally specific DV organizations in the state of Massachusetts. And we do not get equal funding, and we fight for that constantly. We serve the entire state. Most DV organizations serve a region, and they get more funding than us. We have 23 languages collectively on staff. You're not gonna find a government agency that has 23 languages, services being provided in 23 Asian languages. Not gonna happen. But we're funded still less. And so I agree 100%. And I would add that your government officials and legislators work for you. Do be angry and tell them you all know what's going on. You all know what's frustrating you and what you need to happen. Tell them. They work for you.
If I can add one more thing, and it's, be angry, get involved, uplift your community organizations, but take advantage of this room. I mean, cherish this room. Think about it. We are here on a Thursday, on a rainy Thursday night. We battled traffic. We took the team, kind of hauled it from Kendall, and we are here in this room together to talk about Asian American mental health for women. How niche is that? And so how niche and how neat is that we are all here together. So get to know each other, build allyships, build relationships, because you never know who you're going to meet, what ideas others have, what work others have done in this space. And you can work together and build those relationships so that we can build that critical mass. And so we can go to decision makers. We can talk to experts in the field, and we can do this together. So rooms like this, and I'll thank Audrey and the group for putting this together.
Right.
Exactly, and also my apologies. And so take advantage of this opportunity, because it doesn't happen ever. And so this is I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but it could be a once in a lifetime. more than that. But to take advantage of this opportunity to be in this room together and to be in these relationships. And so we can, when we're all eating out there, then let's talk, let's build, let's get our contacts together so we can outreach and build those relationships over the long haul.
Yeah, and APIMHA, we really work to connect the dots a lot, to try to make sure that people know what's going on. We have, just as a shout out, May 10th is Congress has a resolution that is National Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Mental Health Day. In fact, we actually put in a request for a proclamation from Governor Healy as well as Mayor Wu. Heidi helped us out with that. So, so we had really trying to uplift that day. And not that it should just be a day, right? But at least it's a day where people could say, this is really important. That's why there's a day, right? So I think we need to think about that. So we have some time for some questions. Do people have questions for our panelists? Yeah.
Can you give us the mic?
The mic up here, I can even get out of the chair.
It's hardwired.
So, it's a wire mic. Okay, so people can come up.
Maybe come on.
Maybe
We can
come
or
up.
you can yell.
Come on up. It's a wire mic,
Hi, my name's Annie. Very nice to meet you guys, and thank you so much for being here, for moderating, and also for being on the panel. My question is actually about who is not in the room, because I was thinking about that tonight, coming here, rainy day, like you mentioned, traffic, fatigue. I did invite some friends. Some people couldn't make it in the end. So I think the people who are here are very engaged, and we definitely want to take advantage of that network and the community here for sure. But my question is more about, other than, bringing more friends to events like this, what some of the more obvious things you could do in terms of like sending, websites or information or pamphlets, like what less obvious things come to mind as things that we can do to destigmatize, to bring more people to get involved, whether it's civic engagement or just talking about women's mental health, some of the less obvious things that come to mind maybe.
Anyone? Talk about it all the time. No, I mean it.
Engage in conversation, make it sort of
Yes.
It's almost, for many communities, for many families, it's almost taboo.
It is.
And, it's, oh, so-and-so is, so-and-so's going to a therapist, so-and-so is, well, talk about it, normalize it, so it's not stigmatized, so that, so it's almost like, it's almost like an everyday part of your conversation. You don't have to go out of your way to do it, but make it sort of just a normal part of that. And that's, so, and it eventually it would bring others into the conversation so that they're more comfortable talking about it. And as they become more comfortable talking about it, you slowly but surely grow the tent. And it's not gonna happen overnight. It's a generational struggle. I mean, it's gonna be a generational struggle, so we have to kind of impart that on our children and our grandchildren and then their grandchildren. So that slowly but surely, it enlarges that tent so that it becomes sort of one where where none of us are afraid to talk about it, and we're all involved in the fight. So it becomes, we talk about cancer, like everybody talks about cancer. That's not, so, this is just as widespread, if not more so than cancer. Why is that normalized as opposed to, mental health? So, make it so that it's kind of like that.
Yeah, so really great. That's really like hitting, the core of the importance. And I'm going to give you an example. So talk about it. Talk about some like really stigmatizing topic to people that you know or as a fact. Okay, so I wanted to study the survival of the suicide, right? But I couldn't find any studies focusing on Asian Americans. Zero publication, which I thought was ridiculous. But then there are some studies published in South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong. So I was looking at it, and I thought a really shocking thing is that I talked about how many people are being affected by the person who is suicide, right? Died by suicide. In South Korea's study, it shows that if you die by suicide, they did actually study the relationship. So who is most vulnerable to die by suicide? Okay, as a result of the suicide, is the wife of the husband who died by suicide. The risk is 5 times greater than those people who died by something else. Okay? And then the next person who is most risk is the mother of the daughter who died by suicide. It's a greater risk, as a 3 times greater risk of the similar death, but not the suicide death. What I'm saying is that women, these are women. Wife is a woman, daughter of the mother is women too. Women are very vulnerable when it comes to this kind of thing. So I'm using this story to normalize it. It is such a tragic death, if you think about it. It's a worst kind of death, what you can do to people who are surrounding you. If you think about, if you look at it just purely epidemiological perspective. But I began to talk about this because it is related to women's health. It is normalizing. It is also educating people who, because many of the suicide happens because of impulse. If you know this, then they may think twice about it. So we have to normalize it, we have to talk about it, even though it's a very difficult conversation. By doing so, we are educating everybody together.
And just a quick shout out from NAAPIMHA. NAAPIMHA has a training grant. We're doing mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid, which is trainings that basically help people figure out how to talk about it. And we're doing it with Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian cultural considerations. So go to NAAPIMHA's website, naapimha.org, and we have online trainings that also can help talk about it. Don, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, the only thing that, maybe this is something that, I guess the one thing that just came to my mind, I was just thinking about, I had a conversation with my mom about this, it was like a couple months ago, and I don't know how it came up, and I think it stemmed because my daughter and I have become very close in talking about sort of mental health and mental health issues, and that's become something for us, and it sort of got me thinking like, how would my mom feel about a therapist, if she ever wanted one, and so we started talking about it openly, so I guess, and her response was that, before I wouldn't have, I think now I would because it's been so normalized and because people talk about it more. And so I think those intergenerational conversations matter, and I think it's because my mom's Japanese, and so the culture that I was raised in is Japanese. That's the culture that I was raised in, so that's something that wasn't talked about when we had our own mental health struggles within the family. It's just something that just wasn't discussed.
Right.
So it's become something that we talk about more openly now. But I think the times have changed, and because people are talking about it, because youth are talking about it, and it is becoming more normalized, that it's helping that process.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
How much time do you have, like a minute and a half?
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm so grateful to be here with you guys. I seriously just came here to help Audrey with chairs, but I mean, this is great. And I mean, I'll be honest, is that I am invested in this work. As someone who is a certified career specialist, in the fall starting Civic and social work school, my sixth career, I'm 46, so I, probably be in class with people in their 20s. But anyway, it's, been really hard for me to be around Asian Americans in this topic, because it feels frustrating, and I'll be honest, is that their anger isn't about why the system is not serving us, because I have too many friends who are Asian did not get serviced for the mental health services they need, and some of them died by suicide, and I still carry that, But I think sometimes the anger is towards my fellow Asians. And I see Audrey, I see Pata doing this work alongside me. I think some of the people in this room I've never met, and I believe that you're all fully committed. I didn't even know Leverett you were in. Maybe I just am not involved enough in politics, but there's just so few of us that it feels so isolated, and when you say things like, get involved, run for city council, it's just like, WTF, it's like I'm just trying to survive, It's exhausting just existing sometimes if you're a person with lived experience like me, and all of us actually, pandemic hit us hard, it's still hitting us hard, so it's we're tired, and it's feels really tiring doing this in isolation sometimes. And sometimes I can vent to Pat and be like, this is really annoying, how sometimes I feel like Mayor Wu, should it be an Obama moment? No, it isn't. I'll just tell you it isn't. I've tried engaging with her, and I'm sure she is a wonderful human being, trying to do her best, but there's a politics game there that she can't even control. She's coming into many white men having done what they've done, and she's popping in, and then she can help be a puppet in some ways. So I guess the question is the question of hope, because I know it's out there and you're going to give me a good answer about it. And we have 30 seconds left, and I know you can't answer it in 30 seconds, but I guess it's are we really going to stay in touch, and are we really going to continue this work together? Because I don't know, I'm sort of down there on the hope deprivation, hope level. So that's just kind of what I'm saying, not being too much of a Debbie Downer,
No, but I think it's an important question. How do we cultivate hope?
Having been involved in sort of community organizing and politics, it is a very hard, long, slow slog, and it's so frustrating. And it's so easy to take 2 steps forward, you take 1 step, sometimes 2 steps back. It is a very hard slog, and it's frustrating, it's sad, it is tiring, it is exhausting. I've been there, I'm there now. But I think we're not all going to stay in touch. It's just human nature. Life happens. Work happens, school happens, family happens. All these things happen. But what I like to think is that if we have, we have to take sort of the very logistical steps of, okay, can we circulate the email addresses of everybody? Can we circulate the contact addresses of everybody? Those are sort of the very basic things that we can do to try to stay in touch and try to stay engaged, and and try as much as we can to make that proactive effort, knowing very well that we're not all going to stay in touch. But even if 1, 2, 3, 4 of us stay in touch, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us move forward together, that's 3 or 4 more people than we had before, plus maybe our networks. And so again, and I used the term before, it's a generational struggle. It's so hard, it is so slow, and it's gonna beat you down. But that's why a room like this is so, I'm feeling energized. It's because there's a room full of people who I've never met before, who are interested in the same topic, and maybe I'll come out of this with 1 or 2 new folks who I can invite to and put on my spam list that a lot of folks know about. But it's those types of small victories that energize me. And you know, if I try to look at the long term, I was like, oh my God, I gotta do this, this is no freaking way. But it's the small victories that kind of keep you going. It's the small relationships that kind of keep me going. And that's how, you know, I'm only speaking of myself, and I realize I'm a dude. I have privileges. You know, I come from an area of privilege because I'm a dude. And I don't have to battle a lot of the obstacles that are out there that women, non-binary folks, and others have to battle. But that's how I personally, that's my lived experience. And again, I've been doing this now for hundreds of years. And that's kind of how I survive. Because otherwise I just be, you know, I can't freaking do this anymore. But that's how I personally get through it. So I hope that helps.
Yes, Dom?
Yeah. So I understand where you come from, because a lot of times I feel that way too. And I am disappointed with my Asian American folks too. You know, because I feel like if you're Asian American, you gotta do this. You have to support Asian Americans. We have to support each other. But everybody is not at the same place. You know, I think that part of the challenges of being Asian Americans is that we use multilingual. We came from all different countries. We have a very, very difficult history. You know, like I came from Korea, right? Korea was fighting with China and Japan all the time. Like, I don't know how many times they, killing each other, right? And then you come to America and we become friends. Forget about everything. It just doesn't happen, right? And then there's one thing, the painful history goes way back 5,000 years or more. Another thing is that the immigrants mentality. You know, we after all, like I'm an immigrant, but I came to America when I was 22 years old as an international student. And to be honest, like for a long time, I couldn't even go to the night meetings. I want to work with you. I'm telling you the truth. I had to survive. I had to make my career. I have 3 kids at home. I couldn't really do the time. My time was not available. Although I knew that this was important. So I think having a little bit of understanding, but time will come. Time will come. Keep pushing the importance. Keep talking about it. And I think the right time will come to people. And another thing is that, really increasing our awareness of this political, civic engagement importance. I think that is just so critical. And even though we are walking slowly, but I really believe that Asian Americans, we are so smart. We can find a way to survive, and we can find a way to thrive. It's a matter of time. So let's trust in ourselves. Let's trust in our next generation. We should keep inspiring our next generation. I think that is our responsibility. And they will change. And we have to pave the way to do that.
Thank you. Dom?
So I don't know if I have an answer for you, to be honest. And I think there's work, and I don't even know if I'm answering this correctly, but I think there's a lot of work being done around mental health in different spaces. Like I know as for our organization, as a domestic violence, working with survivors, the survivors that we work with are victims of trauma. They are, going through, but it's for us, it's more about how do we even have a conversation around this without them saying, don't tell me I'm crazy. So how do we even approach that? So that's like been our work. And it's also been, for us, it's been about, so it's a lot of it's been in-house. And it's been, how do we work with our advocates who are working with our clients who are dealing with a lot of, anxiety and I can't sleep at night and depression and suicidal ideations, and how are they dealing with that? Because they're not going to go see somebody. And a lot of times there's not even anybody who's available, and then there's not anybody who's available who's bilingual, and they can't pay for it because they're on mass health. I could go on as to why they can't access it if they wanted to, or if they felt that they wanted to. And so if a lot of it's in-house, so how do we work with our staff who are sort of pseudo-counselors because there isn't anybody else. So I honestly don't think that I have an answer for you, and I apologize for that. But I think you're asking, like, how do we all do this better together? And I agree with you. I don't know how to do that. And I see it in these spaces, though, where people are coming together, and I think that's important. And so how do we continue to keep those connections? And I see a lot of resources go out, the resource books go out. Like, how do we connect them all together so that we're all making a much larger impact with a similar agenda? And so I don't have an answer for that, but that's just my thought process.
And I think that you point to the fact that we are siloed in a lot of ways. We're siloed, sometimes as Asian Americans, sometimes as people who work in mental health. Mental health is separated from suicide prevention, which is separated from domestic violence, which is separated from substance use disorders. I mean, so we are not very good at
connecting. And they're interconnected.
So that's I think one of the things that some places like NAAPIMHA tries to work on, right? Is to try to connect. We work with NAAPIMHA, which is the Asian American group that does substance use disorders. We work with so we try to create these collaborations and connections. And so again, I invite you to our space. If you're a person with lived experience, please join the NAAPIMHA network. But I think that it's really important though to realize that I don't personally think we are like out of energy or out of hope. Personally, I'm not out of hope yet, because I feel like I see people in this panel, I see all of you making strides, trying. And sometimes we bang our heads against the wall, we do. But at the same time, if we were silent, what would that feel like? And Audre Lorde has this quote that says, "So it's better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive." It sounds depressing, but it's not actually to me. Because it means that, even though there are forces that are trying to push against us, we need to speak. We need to use our voices. We need to break through that, because that's how we're going to make change. So, yes, I
just want to try not to do the kind of Debbie Downerness. Grace Lee Boggs, is it Grace Boggs? Grace Lee Boggs, activist, she was an academic also, and, did tremendous work in, bending our just said, she said, I'm going to butcher her quote, but it's like, we're looking for leaders everywhere, and maybe that leader is us. And when I read that quote, I was like, damn it, yes, it is, and kind of like, it's like inspiring, but also like it's a heavy load,
But
I'm glad that you guys are
Not if
leading.
you're doing it together. I mean,
Yeah, we're doing it together.
And when you feel, that's why a room like this is so helpful, because if you feel downtrodden, if you feel helpless or hopeless, when you have somebody else to lean on, or others to lean on, it doesn't feel as bad, or at least they can help uplift you, and then vice versa. When it happens to them, they have somebody to lean on as well. That's how we kind of move and elevate each other and lean on each other together.
And another thing is that I think it's very important, now I'm realizing it, to remind ourselves one virtue. The one virtue is generosity. We need to be generous. Generous about the time, So you're generous because you came here.
Yes.
That's generosity. And then you're going to do something, or educate, or get involved, be a leader. That's generosity. And that's
Just
really
help me boundaries.
Okay, so one of the things though I think that we point out is that we're all here, right? And so we all came out. I want to thank you all for coming out and really participating. And I want to thank our panelists again for jobs like that. And I want to thank our volunteers who helped pull the chairs out, and our videographers, and our phenomenal Audrey and Ken who pulled us up. And so please go forward and try to take what you've heard here, pass it on, talk to each other. I mean, there are a few minutes before we have to vacate, so feel free. Is there food still out there, or is it? There's probably food still out there, so if anybody's hungry, grab something on the way out. And thank you again.
But the survey, there's a.
Oh, whoops, sorry. Thank you. I'm losing my mind here. So we are going to be sending a community resource list and a event survey. We really appreciate it if you filled that out for us. It won't take long. If you want to try the interactive polling, you can do that as well. This poll will take a little longer. We'll send that out to you as well and see if it will work in an email. Okay? So thank you very much. And yeah.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all so much.